Hey guys, welcome back to the Super Advice YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Jeremy and we're about all things financial, but more importantly, helping you understand so you can get ahead financially. I worked and earned some money in Australia. Should I transfer my superannuation to New Zealand? Well, that's ultimately up to you. I can give you some pros and cons and share some of the experiences that we've had because Super Advice has transferred many millions of dollars for New Zealanders that have come home and want to bring their superannuation. The reasons why you may want to do it is we think it's important if you're going to stay in New Zealand forever, you should have your money in the same country where you live. Also, another thing to be aware of is that most superannuation funds in Australia have insurances attached to them, life insurance, disablement insurance, and even income protection insurance. You will find that most of those insurances won't pay unless you are still living in Australia. So you're paying for insurances that don't work. So if you do decide to leave your superannuation in Australia, make sure you find out if that is the case, and more importantly, cancel those insurances if you find out that you can't use them. Okay, so another thing to know is if you do transfer your superannuation to New Zealand, it's got to go into KiwiSaver. If you transfer KiwiSaver to Australia, it's got to go into a superannuation. You can't take the money out and put it in your bank account and spend it. We get that question a lot, and a few disappointed people until a few years go by and they haven't spent it and they've still got it and they've watched it compound, which is a nice feeling. I lived in Australia for 13 years, and I remember when I came back to New Zealand, I ended up transferring my superannuation into KiwiSaver. It was a time where financial markets were doing terrific and they were on the rise big time. So I was able to transfer my $120,000 New Zealand, I think it came to, and within 6 or 7 years it was 240. It had doubled, which takes me to my next point. You cannot use Australian transferred superannuation into KiwiSaver. You can't use it for a first home deposit, but you can use the returns that you make from that superannuation that sits within your KiwiSaver. So, my example, I brought 120 over, 6 years it turned to 240, so I could use 120 towards a first home in New Zealand, which was super helpful. It's incredibly laborious to a point where I am convinced they've made it so difficult so that you give up trying to bring your money to New Zealand, because Australian fund managers don't want you withdrawing your hundreds of thousands of dollars, or the New Zealanders, and there's so many of them that have lived and worked in Australia. We, Super Advice, has had businesses both in New Zealand and Australia over the years, so we understand both markets intimately and have a great process and are able to help and have helped many New Zealanders transfer many millions of dollars back to New Zealand. So I hope that's helpful. If you find today's content helpful, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell.